Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome back to today's episode of the Green Speaker series. And today we are here with Kennedy, Yero, myself, and Christian Knutson. So Christian, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. First off, introduce myself a little bit in my language. How midakiape, chante washteya nape chiuzape, Christian Knutson imanchiape, ogle luta elwati, ogle luta emataha, oglala lakota, hemacha, and waniatu, ma wikjemna nupa akeyame. So just a quick translation. I said, hello. I greet you all with a warm heart and a good handshake. My name is Christian Knutson. I grew up in Red Shirt, and I'm from Red Shirt. I'm a member of the Oglala Lakota Tribe, and I'm 23 years old.
Thank you for that introduction. So, Christian, I first wanted to ask you right off the bat, what language is that?
Lakota.
Lakota. Okay.
Yeah.
And what tribe does that originate from?
It is from the Lakota Tribe.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of a real quick organization lesson. So when you hear in history books, when you hear the term Sioux, like the Great Sioux Nation, they talk about three tribes, the Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota. And I'm part of the Lakota, and that divides up into more tribes. And so specifically, I'm from the Oglala Lakota tribe. But we also have like similar languages. That's why we're grouped up together. Mm-hmm. And we're called Sioux in history books, but we call ourselves the Ocheti Shakoi, which means the 7 council fires.
7 council fires. Wow. That's beautiful.
Awesome.
And thank you. I just wanted to ask you that really quick because that was the most unique introduction that we've had so far on the podcast. So I definitely wanted to just get that little bit of background.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, Kennedy, I know y'all were talking right before we started. Did you want to hop back into that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I met Christian out in Washington, D.C. for a conference, and I was blown away, to be quite frank. He stepped up to the plate and done a great presentation on, his day-to-day activities as an intern. He gave a little backdrop on his culture, and I could definitely tell that he has immersed himself in learning more and shining light on his history and his culture, especially for people who have, no idea, what exactly takes place within the tribes and the language and, the full scope of, the whole heritage. And that's the one thing that stuck with me. Like, man, that's a lot that I do not know. And I want to know more, I want to sit down with this young man and talk to him a lot more and ask him, hey, how did you even get into working in the outdoors in the conservation field, and where are you located? How did you grow up? Wasn't on the res, what exactly took place? Where are you currently working, Christian?
Yeah, so I'm working as a park ranger for Badlands National Park, located in South Dakota. Half the park is located off the reservation, and half of it is located on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And so just to make it easy, they call it the North Unit and the South Unit. I work part of the South Unit at the White River Visitor Center. And the cool thing about the South Unit is it is co-managed with the Oglala Lakota Tribe and the park. So they work together to run it.
Can I ask you, what does that partnership look like between the tribe and the center? And how are those decisions made?
Yeah, so it's part of the superintendent of Badlands National Park. He works directly with the tribal government here on the Pine Ridge Reservation. We're technically a sovereign nation. And so it's almost like a country operating within the country. And so we have our own government, and that's who the superintendent works with directly. And they work together to solve any kind of problems, whether that's like leasing issues. I know a lot of ranchers are around here and they lease the land for their cattle, whether that's development or any kind of stuff like that.
Got you. And before we started, I believe you were mentioning that the government had actually acquired it before that and was using it for bombing runs for planes. Do you mind talking about that a little bit more?
Yeah, no problem. So when the reservation was established, they just set their boundaries and they said, this is where you people live. And I think it was a little after World War II, kind of during like when the Korean War was going on.
Mhm.
They used eminent domain and they took the land with the what the South unit currently is, and they didn't care who's living there, what stuff was on there. They just said, you got 10 days. In 10 days, we're dropping bombs. And so it didn't really leave much choice to the people living there. And so they got out of there. And I can't remember the exact date of how long it went on. It went on for at least a decade. And they just bombed things up or blew things up. They dropped bombs, they shot bullets. They had like these little kind of like they were like a makeshift drone. They kind of like flew themselves with a kite and they shot it. They told stories about the huge fossils coming out of the formations, and they would try to hit them with bombs and stuff like that. And it was kind of crazy because they didn't really know where the boundaries were from an airplane. And so like they have stories of towns nearby the park that weren't even in the bombing range, having bullets shoot through their roof. And that continued for a little while until the Air Force said, all right, we're done with it. We don't need it anymore. And so it was kind of like all up for grabs. All kinds of different people wanted it. It was like surplus land. And the tribes wanted it back. They said it was our reservation. It never should have left in the first place, and it should be back on the reservation, and we should say how it goes. But the government wasn't really buying that at the time. And so the one way was kind of a compromise, so the tribe would have some say in it. And they agreed to make it part of Badlands National Park and co-manage it. And that was a way they could keep some control over it rather than just giving it up to someone else or just selling it off.
Got you.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. So, from what I've heard, this is an area that you grew up in.
Yeah.
So, how exciting it must be to you grow up in this area, you know the history of it, you get the opportunity to engage more people in your position as a park ranger in the same area that you grew up in. Like, was that a dream at some point, or was it a goal, something on your checklist, a bucket list? How did this all come about? Where did it start?
Yeah, I guess it was kind of just getting lucky. It was never really a goal of mine. You know, growing up as a kid, you always heard about, they teach you about the bombs. Don't touch them when you find them. And there's signs on like along the highways that say former bombing range and stuff like that. And we'd hike in the Badlands all the time as kids, and we'll go way out there. And I never knew it was a national park. I think I was like 16 years old when I realized I lived like 2 miles from a national park. And so it never really was like a specific goal of mine. And then things just kind of fell into each other, and people liked what I knew about the park. I grew up there. So like, I don't know like the technical science aspects of it exactly, but like I grew up there. So like, I know what's around there, the kind of plants that grow there and the animals and a lot of the history of it.
So, with the plants in Washington, D.C., I heard you give a presentation, and some of it actually spoke on, the plant life, that's actually there. And I heard you mention that, some of it could be utilized as medicine. So is it possible you to touch on, for those that are listening and watching, what exactly does that mean when you say medicine, the good medicine, bad medicine, and, the plant life and vegetable can be utilized for all of those things, from a cultural standpoint?
Yeah, so it's exactly like what you said. It's a medicine. So you think about it, this knowledge goes back thousands of years, like from time immemorial. How long my people, the tribe has operated and lived on these lands, before Europeans showed up, we didn't have Walmarts or grocery stores or nothing like that. And so whenever we needed medicine or food or anything like that, the teachers of the culture, usually the elders, your grandma and grandpas would teach you. They say, check out this plant. This is what's its name. This is how you can use it. And it'll be for a variety of medicines. One of the ones I touched on in the presentation was the curly cup gumweed. And it has like this sticky resin on it. A lot of people don't really like it just because it's like a thick plant and it gets everything sticky. But from the teachings of our culture, you could actually gather up all that resin on the plant and it treats poison ivy. You put it on there and it stops itching.
That's interesting, which kind of takes me to the point of, you're being a great role model for those, young adults and those kids after you from the res. What advice as far as networking, them jumpstarting their career, what advice would you kind of give them, being that you're now in the position to where you can really lobby for them and you're opening up doors and breaking down barriers for those after you from the res?
Yeah, so I guess I never really thought of it specifically, but hopefully I can set the same example as those before me did. There's quite a bit of Native Americans who worked in the park system. Badlands used to have a Native American superintendent a while back, and just kind of like what they did for me, set the example that it's possible. That all the things you learn from growing up on the reservation, all the things your family teaches you, that's valuable knowledge that the park doesn't have access to right now. And, it could really help to create a more inclusive environment in the park, but also help teach and learn and help people learn all these new things and learn about our culture, all kinds of stuff like that.
Was there ever any pushback when it came to as far as relocating outside of the reservation? I'm not from, the culture, the tribe. My fiance she's Choctaw Chickasaw, so I'm still learning and still, trying to immerse myself in the culture as well. But one thing that, she always mentions is, the whole relocation factor, and it just feels safer, there, and the whole trust factor. How much does that come into play?
It comes into play quite a bit. You always hear about it growing up, is they call it culture shock here. And so you grow up on the reservation, like that's all you know. You see people who look like you, talk like you. Everyone does the same things, and that's just what you're used to. Go to high school here, you learn how to play a res ball, you learn how to play basketball like that. And then all of a sudden, you're 18 years old, you're going off to college, you're excited. You get there, and then all of a sudden, nobody looks like you, no one talks like you, none of the slang transfers over. It's almost like you got to relearn how to talk, and it's like you're learning how to operate like within a new city pretty much. So it's just kind of like that shock of like wow, I'm really somewhere else, and it's not like anything at all I'm used to. And you crave that comfort, throughout all the history of colonization and genocide. Our people was able to survive by coming together and like caring for each other and keeping each other up. And so when you have to go off by yourself somewhere you never been, and not a lot of people know about Native Americans or Lakota culture, and so it's almost like you crave that and you want to go back. And that's like the tough part, is that you're not so sure that you want to leave the reservation at that point. Like everything inside you just says you want to go back and go back to what you're used to, right? And so that's kind of one of the big things. And a lot of people struggle with that, I'd say quite a bit. But a lot of people made it through it as well. They went to college, they got their degrees, and now they live all over the world and do all kinds of jobs. And so it's just trying to get over that initial, uncomfortability of being somewhere new and learning how to react in all kinds of different ways to new things.
And Christian, I wanted to ask you, working on the park site now, do you get like a lot of non-native visitors to the park who are interested in learning about the culture?
Yeah, there's quite a bit. It's pretty interesting. There's the whole old stereotype of the romanticized Native American. This one of my friends, we were talking about it. She calls it the long hair, feathers, and sunsets. That whole image of buckskin looking over the valley, and a lot of westerns. They show that, and people love those things, and so they think they'll drive down this interstate and they'll see Reservation there. Let's go check it out. Let's see what it's about. So it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of groups of like tourists who just want to go and like they don't know anything about it, want to learn more. And then there's also there's a lot of people who like kind of have a savior complex. They want to come and see it, and they like feel bad for us and all that kind of stuff, and they think they're helping by feeling sorry for us, but it's not really. This is a place where we live and live our lives, and they think it's like something just to feel sorry about and like a feel good story for them if they could help someone out here.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and so like there's two kinds of visitors that we get a lot like that, and then there's just some people who are like just genuinely curious. They come to the park and they see that part and they're like, I want to check it out. I want to see the land. I want to see how it's taken care of down here.
Some of your day-to-day activities, I know it consists of, definitely being outdoors, and outside. And what are some of the exciting, like some of the high points of your week, when you're out? Now you're a park ranger at Badlands National Park. What are some of the high points of your week?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to comment right now with the whole pandemic going on. As soon as this started, the tribe, they passed the tribal ordinance and they closed down the borders to the reservation. So our visitor center hasn't been open all summer. And so we don't really get visitors, but that given us a lot of time to work on and develop projects. And so one that I'm kind of working on, I'm really excited about it, is we're working on like a video series to kind of highlight Lakota artists, because art's a big part of the culture down here, and I think it's one of the best ways that could show people glimpses into the culture and be able to show different types of art. Sometimes people get caught up with the made in China dream catchers, and they want that like the store-bought sage smudge kits, stuff like that. And so I think it would be beneficial to everyone to see some actual artists and like look at the craft they're doing. And I've got quite a bit started into it. It's not finished yet or anything, but that's something I really look forward to doing, and I have a lot of fun doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to shout any of those artists out right now, because our viewers and our listeners, they definitely would love to tap in, whether it's social media, whether it's Googling those names. Feel free to shout those artists out, because we definitely want to support.
Yeah, and I'd say if you also have like a couple of samples that you can send to us, we can put those in the video as well.
Okay, yeah, I don't have anything like specifically offhand. One I can say, shout out to the partner that we're working with is Racing Magpie in Rapid City, South Dakota. They're an art gallery, and they give art spaces to help uplift Lakota artists, and they have a lot of artists, and it's really cool with the stuff they're doing.
And so I wanted to ask you, and basically, trying to show people more about your culture and like what your lives are like, and even talking a bit about the history. So how much of an educational presence would you say the park has?
About the Lakota culture?
Yeah.
I'd say Badlands and Wind Cave, the places, and I'm sure there's other parks that like are very close to a reservation. They do a pretty good job. Uh, but like the Park Service as a whole, it's kind of getting stuck in that romanticized kind of era that I'm talking about. So I think one place that I try to improve on here, and I think a lot of places can improve on, is the more modern aspects of the Lakota culture. And like, we're still here today. We're still doing things, all kinds of different projects. And yeah, the most easiest way to do that is just to hire more native park rangers. No one knows the culture just like them, and they'll be able to teach what can be shared, and hopefully teach a lot of people about the culture and have people be a bit more aware about what it's like.
Absolutely. Would you suggest that a lot of the youth coming up after you take the internship pathway into these federal spaces, or what do you think would be best?
I'd say pretty much any way you could get into would work. I really like the internship I did because they gave me a lot of creativity, and it gave me a lot of freedom that you wouldn't normally have just being hired strictly as a seasonal worker. And so you could kind of work on different projects, test things out, kind of see how it's gonna go. And yeah, the internship would be perfect just to feel things out and see if they would like it even. Or and internships seem to be a lot more accepting of the non-traditional knowledge. So like the things that they grow up learning from their families rather than in textbooks. Internships are a lot more willing to like accept that just as much as a fact as something you read out of a book.
Absolutely. And you can find those GYF internships at serve.gyfoundation.org. That is serve.gyfoundation.org. Shameless plug, but I had to do it.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to do it. It's super fun when I did it.
Yeah, we still have our internships going, by the way. COVID hasn't slowed us down too much, so definitely check us out. And so Christian, I had like a couple of questions, which I like you being like a government employee. I'm not sure like you can answer or I can ask. So if we have to cut some stuff out, Yaro, that's fine. Um, but like the first question I had was like when you interact with visitors who are there to learn about Lakota culture, how much of it can you or how freely can you speak like as a Native American in this culture versus as a park ranger working for the government? So I guess in a way I'm trying to ask like how restricted are you in like what you can and can't talk about?
Yeah, I think the restrictions don't necessarily come through on the park side, more of just being a Native American, right? We talk about this quite a bit down here of not being a prop for a story or something like that, We're people and we got our own culture and language, and we're not just like some token or some backdrop to some story about a park. And furthermore, then the Lakota culture, it had to survive a lot of tough things. I think 100 years ago, we weren't even American citizens. 50 years ago, it wasn't legal to practice our own religion. And so a lot of that survived because we kept it close to ourselves and, kind of safeguarded it and make sure it's still there and it's still going through the proper ways. And so a lot of those things we're kind of hesitant about sharing because we don't want to lose it, right? We want to keep it to the core values of what it is. And so more of the things that we try to think about is what we're willing to share rather than what the park will let us share.
Got you. And going along those lines, are there like boundaries set up in the park to where like visitors can like maybe visit this part of the reservation but not this part, just like help maintain that you said the word earlier, sovereignty. There we go. That sovereignty that your tribe still holds over that land.
Yeah, so there is a border to the South Unit, and so that's all what the park has to deal with, right? And for the rest of it, the reservation, it has open borders, it has open highways. People can come and go as they please. One thing we really try to emphasize here at the White River Visitor Center is that like the reservation isn't exactly a tourist spot. It's a place where we live, and it's a place where people go to work, and it's not really cool to just drive by all slow and like, oh wow, look at that. And we're just trying to make a living here, and so we try to make sure that they know it's a sovereign nation. You know, we got our own police force, we can make our own laws, and we try to make people aware of that you know, this is our land down here, and we're running it how we'd like to, and we'd like everyone to respect that.
And kind of like my last question in that vein, do like a lot of people, or are there like a good amount of people, say like every month, who do get in trouble for just like, you know, ignoring the laws and the sovereignty of the tribe and just like, you know, kind of acting like that ignorant tourist? Like when you see video of people at Yellowstone, like walking up to animals and, you know, they're just really ignorant of like the space that they need to maintain and the respect that they need to have for the land and its people. So is there like a lot of those issues there, or are most of the visitors who come there like mainly like respectful and mindful?
Yeah, so some of them, it's kind of interesting. The ones that get like kind of in trouble are the ones who, you know, just help themselves to whatever land they say. That looks like a cool hill. I'm gonna park right here on the side of the road, cross the fence, and go climb it, not realizing someone owns that land. Someone's, if it's a rancher or a farmer, they're making their living off that land. And so that kind of ignorance, you see a lot of people just, you know, thinking they could do whatever they want and think it's like it's just open land, but it's not like that at all. We have our own we have our own fences and stuff like that. People own land within the reservation, specific families and people, and so they make the rules. It's their land, they decide what happens on it. And so that's where you see a lot of tourists get in trouble. And specifically this summer, we've been having trouble like having tourists respect the closed borders. You know, they say they don't think, they can't grasp the concept that it's closed. You can't come on here. We're trying to protect ourselves from the pandemic. And they think that's like way back in the priorities, and they could just come and visit because that's what they want to do. So that's a lot of kind of ignorant stuff that we see, is people just thinking it's everybody's land and they could help themselves, when really this is our place and you got to respect our rules and our laws.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. I will say, man, I'm very impressed with your level of maturity, and that stood out in Washington, D.C. That's why I think, you know, we clinged on to each other, and we sat, we had dinner, lunch, we talked a lot, we had a lot of great dialogue. You know, I'm very impressed with your, you know, level of maturity. You say you're 23, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, where did that, you know, what examples did you see to get to this place? Because like I'm blown away right now. No, and this is not me exaggerating, but I'm blown away by, like, you're inspiring me, and I'm 32 years old. You're keeping me inspired and motivated to, you know, I want to continue to give back to my community, shed light on the things that's taking place in my area, our culture, and continue to jumpstart, you know, my career and continue to go on the up and up, you know, and continue to elevate. You know, where did that come from? Who instilled those things into you? Like, you're very mature, very mature.
It's well, first off, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it for sure. A lot of it comes from my family, you know, and just being a Lakota, respect's one of the major virtues here. And so some people are so respectful they won't even speak in front of their elders. Like, you're taught at a very early age when to listen and when to speak and how to speak. And especially when you get off the res, you kind of gotta be careful what you say. A lot of people call it code switching. You talk different on the res than off the res, and like in professional settings. And so you kind of get used to it. You know when to turn it off and turn it on.
Absolutely. Code switching is definitely that's a global thing. That's major. I definitely am. I'm familiar with code switching as well. With you speaking, at what age did you start to learn the language and the slang and everything, from you guys' language? At what age did that take place?
From pretty early on. I'm not a fluent speaker myself. I know like I can read Lakota and I could speak it if someone puts it in front of me, but I'm not necessarily fluent where I could speak it all day long with someone. But it started with my grandma, and she's a fluent speaker. She grew up that way. That was her first language. And so it would be kind of things like you ask your grandma to get you a cup so you could get some water, and she'll teach you how to say in Lakota. And from that on, you learn like nose and ears and all that simple stuff. And a lot of schools here on the reservation teach Lakota. And that's kind of where it starts, and you kind of build on it and build on it. And then it's up to you to keep it going and learn more and more.
Absolutely, man. You're a star, man. Like I am impressed again, just as I was sitting in front of you out in Washington, D.C. I definitely want to, send some love your way through some of our outdoor retail partners like Jack Wolfskin. We have these 40% off coupons that I want to, push forward to you to be able to utilize and, whatever space you need to get any gear, anything you need when it comes to, going in the outdoors. It may be a personal hiking trip, it may be work related, but after this, podcast, I'm definitely going to email you all of those things. Shout out to Jack Wolfskin North America too, man. Jack Wolfskin North America, North Face, Vibram, REI. Who else? Am I missing any names? Don't charge it to my heart. I definitely love all of our
Patagonia.
partners.
Yeah, I think you got most of them. I just think Patagonia was one of the ones that I
Patagonia.
recognized. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So shout out to all of our outdoor retail partners. We just recently wrapped up the 2020 Inspiration Awards for the outdoor retailer, and we won the nonprofit sector. So shout out to everybody who was involved and actually voting for us for that part. And I definitely want to turn it over to Yero at this moment. You have anything for Christian?
Yeah, I really want to see if Christian can recognize this song and if it has any relevance to what he has going on in the Badlands. So just give me a sec. Now, that's Bad Boys. I feel like you're in a specific place called the Badlands. And reggae is kind of universal, but what Bob Marley did specifically was popularize the Buffalo Soldiers and Western culture. Specifically in the Badlands and what you guys have going on, what relevance does people's etiquette have to how you engage with outside cultures? So when it comes to you being specifically a member of the Lakota tribe, how do you guys engage with outside people and make it effective so that you guys can both move in a helpful direction?
Yeah, so I can't speak so much as for like my people and like my tribe. I can speak for myself is that like a lot of things I learned is it's okay to accept like other cultures are welcome here and different traditions and stuff. We're moving forward on the same point in time as everyone else. We're not trying to like exclude anything or anyone like that. It's a diverse culture of Native Americans. A lot of people, and again, this always goes back to the romanticized Native American, but there's all kinds of people that are Native American. There's people who are strictly Native American. There's Black and Native American. There's Latino and Native American. Asian Native American, and it's all over. And kind of part of the community here at the reservation and around the Badlands is that everyone's welcome. This is just kind of a place where we're all on the same mission. We're just being here for each other, and we're trying to survive.
Absolutely. And because the Native American race is so multifaceted, I just want to know what values you guys instill in children just as you guys grow up, because you guys grow up on lands that are very open, and nature is just so important. So what do you guys do to instill positive values so that you guys are natural stewards of the land? Because I feel like in our culture, or in the culture that we're perpetuating, we're learning that even people as old as you are right now are not interested in the environment. So how do you kind of instill that value at a young age?
Yeah, so fortunately for us, it's a lot of it's tied into our culture and our teachings. You know, it's not uncommon to hear a story where the lesson is taught to you from a buffalo or from a plant. Plants talking, animals talking, that's nothing new. And I think it all has to do with the Lakota people were very aware of their place within the ecosystem. It was never trying to dominate the land and use the resources for our benefit. We fit in the ecosystem just along with the plants and animals. And my tribe specifically really looks up to the buffalo and the bison and their stories that they taught us how to be. They taught us how to live out here and how to make it, which plants to eat. The magpie has a lot of stories like that. A lot of people say the meadowlark itself can speak Lakota, and their stories of them raising people. And it all just ties in. We're all part of this ecosystem, and whatever we do has an effect and consequences on other people, other plants and animals, just like what they do has an effect on us. And it's all kind of working in the balance. And it's just this whole cycle of going around and living our lives.
Absolutely. I can resonate with that. You guys definitely have to kind of operate within a space of balance. And you spoke earlier about how the reservations could have potentially been bombed or things of that nature. How do you guys find balance or peace within that type of construct? And I'm sure you guys cherish life a little bit differently living with that on your mind.
Yeah, so it's kind of tough. We get a lot of we got a lot of things like with tourists come, and the only thing they want to know is Wounded Knee Massacre, and like that's a heavy subject to talk about. And some people here on the reservation, you kind of get numb to it because you hear it all the time. Like, I don't want to say we're numb to it because we still like respect it, and we mourn those people still that were massacred. But like when tourists come here and they just want to hear about that, and they want to hear all the sob stories and all those terrible things that happened to us, we kind of just gotta it's hard not to separate from it and try to just operate around it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's tough things to bring up and to think about, like with your ancestors just being murdered and killed just because they're Native American. And one thing I see a lot, that kind of a coping method, is Native American humor. People are hilarious down here, and that's one of the ways they cope is they make jokes about things and they'll laugh with each other, and it'll just be some normal day, and you could go kick it with your cousins, hang out with all your friends and joke around, and that makes things a lot easier when a lot of stuff was going bad back then. And that kind of continues today, where there's a specific kind of humor that's around here and that people keep carrying forward, and they keep trying to keep it lighthearted, keep our eyes on the future, and remind yourselves that it's okay to enjoy life and live, and we're all in this together and we got each other's backs.
Right. That's super important. I think humor is, to die for, honestly. Humor will save a life. And I heard you mention magpie a lot. Specifically, do you have any spirit animal or animal that you feel like resonates with you and who you are as a person?
Yeah, it's kind of, I'm not sure if our tribe necessarily has the spirit animal kind of thing, but we definitely have like animals that are very sacred within our culture. And so I think it was Sherman Alexie who said it's it's pretty interesting to see which tribes, which animal is central to their culture. And for us, it's the buffalo. You know, we all look to the buffalo for to be strong and have that fortitude and perseverance and to teach us things. You know, those are our brothers as well, and we look up to them and we we admire them. They're super sacred to us, and we followed them. You know, back in the day and throughout history, they provided everything for us. It was tools, hunting, clothes to build our teepees, all kinds of stuff, and we thank them for that. You know, we did our best to make sure that they knew that we were always grateful for what they did for us. And so we look up to them. They take care of us, and we try to take care of them. And a lot of cultures have that kind of relationship. You know, in the Northeast, some of those tribes, they really look at at salmon the same way, and so they try their best. And you know, you could tell because it kind of goes side by side. We were at our strongest back in the day when there's millions of buffalo and they just roamed all over the country. And some of our hardest times was the buffalo's hardest times as well. They almost went extinct and they're almost completely gone from this planet. And that was at a very low point for native population as well. And so as they rebound, we're rebounding too. And we kind of look to see that relationship and keep it going and see where it goes into the future.
Awesome. Very well said, Christian. That's all I have. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Christian, I had one final question for you. I was just a little bit curious. So I know, you know, the land was originally being bombed by the Air Force. How has it healed over time? And are there still areas that are still like where you can tell like there was bombs dropped here, or has everything mostly sprung back to life?
Yeah, so it's interesting with the Badlands itself because, you know, the Badlands is a lot of clay and things like that. So it erodes really fast. You know, the Badlands erodes about an inch a year compared to the Black Hills that erodes an inch every 10,000 years or something like that. And so a lot of that eroding got rid of a lot of the craters. But one of the ways you still see it is you find these bombs and bullets and they're all rusted out from like the time they were used. Some of them are even unexploded, and so it's kind of dangerous. And you can still see it, and there's still bombs and bullets out there. But you know, the natural world always prevails, and it's kind of rebounding and going back to where it was, and it's starting to just accept it, and it's becoming a beautiful place. It's always been a beautiful place, even with the bombings, but it's becoming a safer, beautiful place, I guess.
Yeah, nature is incredible. Just its ability to like grow back and rebound, like even through like the toughest substances. Like it still blows my mind that grass can like bloom through concrete. How that happens, I have no idea. But I was just like really curious about that process because I figured that there had been like a great healing period for nature. And that's something that, you know, we as humans could really like learn and like just like take as inspiration from our own troubles and just like that bounce back ability from even the hardest of times. But yeah, so thank you, Christian. That was the last question that I had for you today. And unless Zero, you had anything else, I think we can wrap this podcast up. Awesome. So yeah, thank you so much, Christian, for being on our podcast today. It was great to get to talk to you and like learn about your experiences, the Lakota Nation's experiences, and just like what life looks like on that reservation, interacting with nature and interacting with other people who come in, like come to learn. And as you said, some of them come with the savior complex, but it's always just great to hear like what's going on at these parks and like how the people are interacting with nature. So yeah, thank you so much for being on today's episode. And check your email for Kennedy. He should be sending those codes soon. And you can email either me or him about it if you don't get it today, and just like see when that timeline will be. But yeah, so all right, everyone, that'll do for today's episode of the Green Speaker series. I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend, and we will see y'all next time.